Hockney's only in his London studio because he needed to catch up with Rudolf Nureyev, also in London. They're collaborating on a new ballet of Satie's Parade. Hockney's designing the set and costumes. It's California that's been his favourite home ever since he fell in love with it on his first visit 17 years ago.
I get bored in England. You always feel you can never do anything or you can't change anything. That's the way I feel. In America, I always feel freer. Also, I always feel, in California anyway, I start using brighter colours and I paint broader. And instead of painting like that, I paint like that more, which seems to be better for me, I think.
While you've been in England on this trip, you've been doing something rather illegal, or should I say illicit, down at the National Gallery, haven't you?
Well, I thought I'd try and get the National Gallery and the Tate Gallery to let anybody take photographs in there. Seeing I went in last week and took some pictures quite illegally in the National Gallery, and I think the way I do it myself, or anybody else does it themselves, can do it better than the postcards they sell. And I assume the only reason they never let you do it is because they want to sell their postcards. But it isn't the National Postcard Stand, is it? It's the National Gallery. I mean, I understand you can't use flash and things like that. But I thought my pictures were just as good, if not better. And these were all taken with a tiny little camera.
Hockney's always been irreverent about the British art establishment. From a working-class background in Bradford, he was something of an intruder on the smart Bond Street art scene. Ever since he appeared at his first one-man show in a gold lame suit, Hockney's dyed hair, his boyfriends, and his sheer popularity have made more headlines than his talent. But he is, in fact, a brilliant draftsman whose precise technique and careful observation put him firmly in the classical tradition of drawing. The dress designer, Celia Birtwell, is a favourite model in the Tate show. One of the few girls, he says, that I know really well.
She's a very amusing and lively girl, and she's a very good model. She's a turn-on. Sometimes she's moody. Sometimes she says, I'm off her, when she looks at the drawings, if she thinks they were terrible. You know, if you draw somebody you don't know, you tend to struggle for a likeness. You think maybe it should look like them, and you don't quite know what the people look like, really. And whereas friends, you learn slowly, you know, they have many faces in a way. And when I draw people I know well, in a way I don't bother about a likeness. It always is there somehow. Whatever mood they were in, or you were in, I mean, it's about them and you, of course. Water. The idea of drawing water is always appealing to me. If it's clear water, anyway, transparent water, you can look on it, through it, into it, see it as volume, see it as surface. I mean, there's a lot of different things, which, of course, you can't do that with a floor or a wall. And the idea of representing it has always rather fascinated me, and I keep going back to it.
From your very first one-man show, you weren't just recognised as a good artist by the critics and by other artists. You also attracted a very broad public who sometimes were people who wouldn't look at the work of other artists at all. Why do you think you've always been, in that sense, popular?
I tend to think it's a bit overrated. People have made too much of it, really. I think that's my opinion. I mean, I try and I work away, but I think it's not as good. My art is not as good as some people think. It's not as bad as some people think as well, but I have my own rating, really. I place myself in some context.
And where do you place yourself? How good do you think you are?
Well, I assume I will get better. I assume the best work is yet to come.
This is David Hockney, one of the most influential British artists alive today. Hockney is best known for his iconic paintings of swimming pools and his portraits of his friends and family.
It's a good title. It's better than Dave and Vince. Sometimes I long so much to do landscape, just as one would go for a long walk to refresh oneself. And in all of nature, in trees, for instance, I see expression and a soul. Well, yes. I mean, in 2004, when I went to Bridlington, I knew landscape was seen as something you couldn't do today. That's what they said. You couldn't do today. And I thought, well, why? Because the landscape's become so boring. It's not the landscape that's boring, it's the depictions of it that have become boring, I thought. And I thought, well, yeah, I mean, you can't be bored of nature, can you? You've endless subjects in nature, endless. And Van Gogh knew that. I found subjects on a little road called Woldgate, the Roman road to Bridlington. I asked somebody once, what colour is the road? He looked at the road a bit. Then he said, it's not just grey, is it? I said, no, it's not, if you really look. But you have to really look. Photography, you're not really looking. But when you're drawing one blade of grass, you're looking, and then you see the other blades of grass, and you're always seeing more. Well, that's exciting to me, and it was exciting to Van Gogh. I mean, he saw very clearly, very, very clearly. The uglier, older, meaner, iller, poorer I get, the more I wish to take my revenge by doing brilliant colour, well-arranged, resplendent. That's very good. I couldn't say that, yes. He was a kind of miserable man in a way, but when he was painting, he wasn't. I mean, that's what he loved to do, and there's love in those paintings, isn't there? I mean, there's not misery, there's love. I'll tell you why I think people really love them is they can see how they're done. All the brush marks are visible. You can see how they're painted, really. He was really the first great colourist, I think. Great colourist. I'm not a colourist like Van Gogh. I'm not. I mean, I'm just a small one. I'm in a fury of work as the trees are in blossom, and I wanted to do a Provence orchard of tremendous gaiety. Yes. Gaiety, that's right. I mean, that's for the blossom, isn't it? I was always interested in the arrival of spring, what comes first. Marvellous time, of course it's gaiety, of course it's fresh. I mean, everything is fresh about blossom, isn't it? Winter's over, all the plants are coming up. There's a moment when I said nature has an erection, when everything is stood up like that. It looks as though champagne has been poured over the bushes and it's all foaming up, and it looks marvellous, and it only lasts like 2 days or something, I mean, at its peak. This is full of movement, absolutely. Marvellous. Marvellous. He saw more than other people, I think. He did. He saw space very clearly, which not everybody can see. All painters bent perspective. Leonardo bent perspective. In a way, nature doesn't really have perspective. I've noticed trees don't follow the rules of perspective. They're so complicated, I mean, the branches going every way, that perspective is no use for them, really. Perspective is a strangle, I think. It's not really making space, it's strangling space, I think. Not everything I do is a success, of course, but the work's getting along. Well, I would say that. But the work's getting along, yes. Yeah. If he'd have gone on another 10 years, he'd have been a very rich man, wouldn't he? He would, actually. I've painted for 60 years now. I'm still painting. And I'm still enjoying it enormously, yes. And Van Gogh enjoyed painting. He did. I mean, they're full of joy.